Hi, everybody. I'm Chuck, and this is my good friend David from Tokyo, Japan. And today we're going to start a new series. By the way, what we do when we meet together, we spend the first 10 minutes in the Word, just discussing the Word. So that's what we're doing. And we're going to start a new series on the upper room discourse. David's going to start with John chapter 12, verse 20, not your traditional place to start the upper room discourse, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So, David, if you would start reading for us.
Yes, sir. Okay, verse 20. Now there were some Greeks among those who were going up to worship at the feast. These came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and began to ask him, saying, Sir, we wish to see Jesus. Philip came and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip came and told Jesus. And Jesus answered them, saying, The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He who loves his life loses it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it to life eternal. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there my servant will be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Now my soul has become troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this purpose I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came out of heaven. I have both glorified it and will glorify it again.
All right. So, as we read this, David, why are we starting with uh, chapter 12? Traditionally, we start with 13, but you have a reason. I think it's a great reason, but why start here?
Yes. Well, I'll share my reason. I'd love to hear yours if you have a different one, but uh, it really seems like this, in some ways, this conversation, the Greeks seeking to talk to Jesus, in some ways initiated. I don't know. I generally don't know exactly why. Um, and if you have insight to that, please let me know. But it's like something cued in to Jesus that his time was coming, and in a sense, the upper room discourse is his final quality time with his disciples pre-crucifixion, and so he's preparing them for his departure from this point forward. So this is kind of setting up the departure, and in some ways a first little bit of this instruction, and it sets the tone and really gives us great insight into um, what Jesus was feeling and how he responded as this incredible event is coming up. And so that's a few of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I really like that. I call this the trigger moment. Is this is when Jesus knew the trigger, the line of debarkation had been crossed. This was the moment that Jesus knew his hour had come. He had been talking about timing throughout his entire ministry
Yeah.
because he knew he was in such tight communion with the Father. The Father was telling him what was next, what was next. Is
Mm.
it time? Not yet. Is it time? Not yet. Now it's time. And Jesus had been looking forward, not as we think, but looking forward to this time
Mm.
because he knew the redemption of mankind draws near in this hour when the Gentiles begin seeking him out in Jerusalem, near the temple of all places. So the gospel is going to go to the world, but before that happens, the cross has to happen. So
Yeah.
that's, same thing that we're saying. This was the trigger moment. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Amen.
go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Nope. I was just saying amen to what you were saying.
All right. So, head, heart, and hands. What did we learn from this besides our uh, interesting trigger moment?
Yes. Well, um, yeah, and I'll just say this ahead of time that there's in some ways this has been one of my favorite passages for years.
Mm,
Um, and I do not understand all that's in here. So I appreciate we're just dialoguing, looking at what we see
yeah.
here in the surface. But uh, yeah, this is just the principle of death bringing fruit. I mean, even the first sentence is pretty powerful. The hour has come for the Son of Man. He doesn't say to die; he says to be glorified.
Mm.
And so there's great, in this case, very, very good results, benefit to him, benefit to the Father, benefit to the world that's coming from his death. And so just the picture of the grain is always really powerful. I had a friend that used to carry a kernel of wheat in his pocket to remind him of this passage, and the absurdity of trying to protect a seed. A seed only, it only bears fruit if you sow it. So just that principle, I think, is the heart of this. Is Jesus is faced with his death, he's saying, even a kernel of wheat, unless it falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. Interesting that he says the word alone, because I think there's this debate on, is fruit biblically mean like fruits of the spirit, or fruit, external fruit of people, more people in the kingdom. And here just the word alone kind of draws more of the option B to that. So, but just the death principle here seems to be highlighted, and the fact that Jesus is calling us to follow him into that, those are the things that really stand out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as Christian leaders, we spend a lot of time teaching people how to live. Jesus not only taught us how to live, he taught us how to die. And in a physical sense, he taught us how to suffer and be persecuted, murdered, tortured, die. And he taught us this in a metaphorical sense as well, how much he died to himself. I think about, all the people pressing in with all their needs. And Jesus was so gracious, so kind, so loving to all these people. To me, that's my worst nightmare, is that people looking in my window, trying to get in my door. They're in my backyard. Is no, no. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Jesus, he loves the people like that. And so he died to himself metaphorically by pouring himself out to people. And I think, he bore fruit before, but his statement, as you said, when he died, it exploded, and so we need not be afraid of death. Anything else jump at it, yeah, David?
Yeah, well, it's, I know we're kind of interrupting a section here by including it, but verse 27, 28, I really, in some ways, this beautiful metaphor that he paints is applied directly in 27, 28, where he says, my soul is troubled. And again, we kind of see this window into what he's feeling in this moment. And he's saying, my soul is troubled. And he says, well, what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this purpose, I came to this hour. And then he says, Father, glorify your name. And then a voice comes out of heaven and says, I've both glorified it and will glorify it again. And so, I just really appreciate the insight into his heart and his response. So he doesn't say, please remove this difficulty, please make this easier for me. He
Mm.
says, God be glorified in this. And that's a really insightful, powerful response.
Yeah, it's very evident that Jesus has his priorities lined up. He knows what is first, and the
Yeah.
glory of God is always first in Jesus's life. And
Amen.
if we're, meant to imitate him, then, that's what our first priority should be as well.
Yes.
So these are the things that we're learning. This is the head. Let's move to the heart. How does this make you feel?
Yes. Good, great question. I think, yeah, I always feel deeply inspired by this passage. There's a little bit of a trace of fear. Of what am I saying if I imitate Jesus here? But
Mm,
it's a really, I think, swallowed up by the inspiration and exhilaration of being able to face anything that's in front of us as we imitate Jesus. So I think the biggest emotion for me is inspiration from this passage.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you?
yeah. I'm a little convicted by it. You and I both have significant physical challenges, and there are times when I don't know if I'm really glorifying God with my physical challenge like Jesus did. And so how do I leverage my my weakness
Mm,
for the glory of God? And the feeling is, wow, I'm a little convicted because I don't necessarily think about that a lot, but
mm,
um,
yeah,
that's not true. I think about it a lot. It's putting it into action. So,
absolutely.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
also feel incredibly grateful that Jesus did press through whatever feelings, whatever emotion he was having at that moment. And he did what he was purposed to do by the Father. So,
Amen. Yeah.
gratefulness. So, what
Amen.
does this make us want to do?
Um, Yeah. So honestly, I think the most clear practical application for me is, um, and actually it may not be super practical, but just to say, to regularly say, Lord, what's in anytime I'm experiencing discomfort or um, trial or a desire to remove myself from my circumstance, to just say, my soul is troubled, but I'm not going to say, God, take me out of this. I'm going to say, God, be glorified through this. So I think, for me, I'll probably even just make a note in the sometimes verses I'm meditating on. I just put at the top of my to-do list. So I'll see it multiple times a day. And so I'll just have it right in my face. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'll not ask to be removed from the circumstances, but for God to be glorified in it. And I'll just say, maybe looping back to one of the previous questions, is that in a lot of ways, um, being a missionary in Japan, or even anywhere, this really hits, being a missionary anywhere kind of hits at for me, one of the grips of American culture is comfort.
Mm,
We really, really prize our comfort. And it's not uncomfortable to be in Japan. Um, in a lot of ways. There's some ways it's very uncomfortable to be in Japan, but just for the most part, it's a really, um, yeah, it's a really good place to live. So, but that is always comes as a barrier to bearing fruit, is my own comfort. And so when I start to feel uncomfortable, I think um, I've just been trained and taught. I don't know if it's by my culture or my generation or what, is just remove that or fix it, or buy something that can make life easier. And so anyway, every time that hits, there's a real opportunity to battle something that's innate in order as I learn to respond in this way. So that's my action item. I'll put this in my journal and just be aware of what's in front of me that I'm trying to get out of, and to pray for God's glory in that.
Yeah. I'm gonna steal half of your application here.
Great.
You brought up that Jesus admitted, now my soul has become troubled. I don't think I do a very good job about that. In fact, when most people ask me how I'm doing, I'm borderline lying to them because I'm not going to complain. And
Mm-mm.
yet, I don't think Jesus was complaining. I think he was just being honest, you
Yeah.
know. And I think I need to borrow that, be a little bit more honest if I'm in pain, if things are not going well. Don't pump sunshine all the time, be
Mm,
real. And I
yeah.
need to practice being real. So that's
Mm.
my application. All right, let's wrap this up. Any last words, David?
Um, I think um, just the phrase, "For this purpose I came to this hour,"
Mm,
um, is really that there's so many powerful phrases in this, but just thinking in terms of our suffering, our challenges, and what's in front of us. Just seeing here, Jesus saw the Father had a plan. This is a part of the plan, and I'm gonna walk right through it because I trust my Father. And I think we're probably gonna cover this later, but he says, I speak everything that he tells me to speak because I know his commandment is eternal life.
mm.
And just that amount of trust in his Father and seeing that there was a plan just makes it easier. I'd say it's a probably doesn't come naturally for us, but it's just encouraging to see his understanding of purpose and his ability to face what's in front of him through that.
That's a good word. All right. Thanks for joining us. We love you. God bless you. And until next time, keep following Jesus.